Hey guys, Grau here, and today we are counting down the top 7 most disappointing tanks in the game. So in other words, you've done all this grinding, you've made it to tier 10, then you play the tank and it's like, wow, this is a little bit disappointing for various reasons. And yeah, so first on the list is going to be the FE215B. I'm putting this first on the list just because it's kind of a disappointment for many, and for many others it's not a disappointment. It's my favorite heavy tank in the game, but I will admit that it lacks, especially with the buffs that the Conqueror got. Now the Conqueror has the same upper plate. The Conqueror has better gun depression, a better turret, better side armor. And then you upgrade and you now have less turret armor, less side armor, less gun depression, a rear mounted turret. DPM is worse tier for tier, and you have to fight tier 9s and 10s on a regular basis, and you don't get to fight 7s anymore. And so I just feel the FE215B is a bit of a downgrade, especially considering you have things like the Super Conqueror you can grind for instead, or you have the Chieftain, which you can grind for. Even the E5, I think, nowadays is just better than the FE215B. So you have all these other choices over this tank, and if you choose this tank over like the Super Conk and such, it's just a disappointment. It really is. But this does have a sweet spot in my heart, and it has a sweet spot, I know, in a lot of other people's heart, a lot of other players' hearts. But if you ask them if it's worth it, a lot of them will probably admit and say, yeah, I love the tank, but it really isn't worth it. And that's my opinion, of course, and every tank on this list is going to be my opinion. But that's number 7, the FE215B. Next on the list is the Grill 15, or the Gorilla 15, or the Girlfriend. Doesn't matter which. And again, you have this line, which is absolutely... Actually, this is the first time. The Black Prince line wasn't very good. But on this one, you have this line, which is absolutely amazing. Even starting at the lower tiers, like the Martyr 3, and then the Martyr 4, or whatever it is, at tier 4, and then the Flak Bus at tier 5 is amazing, and then the Nashorn's gun is really good, and then the Sturmil, it's a troll tank, but its gun is amazing. And then you have the Rheinmetall Borsig, which is incredible. Then you have the Waffenträger Panzer 4, which is like, how do you make a tank better? And they do somehow. And then you get the Grill 15, and it's like, oh, dang it. But why? Well, it doesn't have, I don't know why, actually, think about it. I think it's 2 reasons. One, you lose all that camouflage you had on the other 2 tanks. Like, you really do. It just disappears. Like, oh, that camo I had, gone. Your gun is supposed to be more accurate, but for some reason it feels like it trolls. It's an awkward tank as well, because of the turret doesn't go all the way around, and it's rear mounted, and that can kind of oftentimes just be a little bit awkward. It turns slowly. It goes fast in a straight line, but that's about it. The penetration lacks for a tier 10 tank destroyer as well. The DPM lacks for a tier 10 tank destroyer here on console, because most of the tank destroyers have about the same rate of fire, but 850 alpha. So you're missing out on that as well. It's just it's a very disappointing tank in my own opinion. And this one is not just my opinion. I know that for a fact. I've spoken to other people, and a lot of people agree that the Waffenträger Panzer 4, if they, gave that a little bit more health, and they could call it a tier 10. It's literally a tier 10 tank, a tier 10 tank destroyer, and it can fight tigers, for Pete's sake. Like, oh, there's a stock tiger over there. Let me just shoot you with my 128. And that's another reason why I feel the Waffenträger Panzer 4 just is so much better, and makes the Grill 15 just feel like this huge disappointment once you finally get it. It's just disappointing. Next, we have the K91 Russian tier 10 rear-mounted medium tank. It doesn't have a fully oscillating turret, or fully rotating turret, like a lot of the other mediums. This one, unfortunately, only goes X one way, X the other way. I don't know the exact number, but it's still pretty good. It's not terrible. The traversing of the turret isn't terrible, should I say. You just can't point it backwards. But that's fine. That's beside the point. You have the Object 430 version 2. 5.7 rounds a minute. That's pretty good for 320 alpha at tier 9. Then you get this. 500. So you have 7.59 rounds a minute. You go up 0.09 rounds a minute. And just so you know, the T54 with the 100 mil gun is 7.69, I believe. So you have a better DPM on the T54, the console version of the T54, which is not the buff DPM version that you have on the PC. So, yeah, your DPM is bad. It's frankly bad. You have this line you've been playing where you have the 416, which has incredible DPM for its tier. Absurd, like 2700 DPM on a tier 8 medium tank? Are you mad? And then you have the tier 9, which goes up a little bit, but it's still an incredible tier 10 style DPM at tier 9. It's like more like tier 9.5 DPM. You've got more than a lot of the tier 9s, but less than most of the tier 10s. But still, it's this incredible damage per minute. And you have incredible armor. And you're incredibly low profile. And then you upgrade to this, and your armor disappears. Your DPM disappears. Your rate of fire disappears. You no longer get to fight Tigers and ISs. You have to fight, you know, IS-7s and such. And it's tier 10, so you don't typically fight tier 8s. I feel, from what I found, most tier 10 games nowadays seem to be tier 9 and 10 strictly. Unless, of course, you're a tier 8. If you're a tier 8, then you somehow find your way into a tier 10 game. It doesn't make any sense, I know. It's weird. But, yeah, you suddenly miss out on shooting the tier 7s. And you now have to fight tier 10s who have 500 more DPM than you. And have armor. And have fully rotating turrets. It's a disappointment. It really, really is. Especially after playing the 416 and then playing the 430 version 2. And now the 430 version 2 leads to the 430U and the Object 430. And the regular Object 430 just outclasses this tank. Better camouflage, better DPM, about the same gun handling, same mobility, more armor. It doesn't make any sense why you would go with this tank when you can go with something like the Object 430. The Object 268 version 4! Number 4 on the list. And the line is really, really bad that you're grinding. You have, and this is of course my opinion, the SU-101M, or M101 or whatever it is, and that thing's a turret at tier 7. Then at tier 8 you have the SU-101. And again, I don't like that at tier 8. I think that's a turd. And then tier 9, the SU-122-54. Again, my opinion, I think that thing's a turd. I think there's a lot of turds in this game. And if you ground out the Chinese mediums and you got to the 121, you know that that whole line is garbage, but once you get to tier 10, it's like, oh, this is worth it. This tank is actually good. That is not the case here. Then you get to tier 10, and it's just as bad as the other ones, if not worse. It's slow, its armor is almost meaningless. If for some reason in the game I'm playing in the background, my armor worked really, really, really well, but I think tanks just kept shooting me in the front, and that kind of helped me out a little bit. Except for him, you know, he puts a shell on my lower plate. I think a heat shell, doesn't really matter. Pens it, goes in. But otherwise, like, dang, this tank is, it's a disappointment. It truly, truly is. And it makes me sad. It makes me sad playing it. And, trying to ace it, because I really want to ace it. Also, 650 alpha damage, even though this is a 152, almost the same gun that's on the 268, but you have 200 less alpha. You have a worse rate of fire. Worse gun handling. Worse penetration. What's the point of it? I don't know. That's just how they sign the tank up. And if you're grinding this tank, that's what you're signing up for. You may as well go get yourself an Object 268. If you're grinding this line, get yourself an Object 263. Don't grab this one. Get the 263. That thing is incredible, and it's seldom used today. I think it's amazing, but, you know, people don't use it anymore. Instead, in fact, people don't use this thing either. I don't see either of these that much in the queue, the 263 or the 268 V4. But if you're going up this line, which I encourage you not to, do yourself a favor and grab a 263 first. That's it. That's my opinion. That's what I say. Object 277. This is going to be a controversial choice, for sure. I know a lot of people are going to be like, the 277 is amazing. What are you talking about, Clone Guy? And I'll get into why I think it's a bit of a letdown. You have the IS-3, which is an incredible tier 8. Then you have the T-10, which is incredible tier 9. And a very mobile, very fast, snappy gun. It's a heavy tank that thinks it's a medium tank and can keep up with mediums and really annoy tanks on the medium flanks. Why is there a heavy here? Then you have the 277. And it supposedly retains those factors, but in my own experience, it just doesn't. You try to play this like the T-10 or like a medium tank, and it kind of lets you down. I think it's slower, sluggish, turns slower, accelerates slower. Now you're fighting more tier 10s, and the tier 10s medium tanks suddenly go from an average of like 220 millimeters of penetration to 260. So suddenly your armor, which barely goes up from the T10, the tier 9, is suddenly inferior. And the gun, some will argue is better, some will argue is worse. I like the T10 gun more. I feel like the gun kind of hit more with that thing, and you had to aim less to get your shots going. But of course, again, that's just my opinion. And you also have the WZ-111 5A in the game, which almost every single Unicum, if you talk to them and they've played both these tanks, they will tell you the 5A is better. And you also have the QL in the game now. And again, every single Unicum will tell you that tank is better. So you have the Chinese version and you have the Russian version, and the Chinese version just does what this can do better. And I'm saying that, but this game you're seeing in the background is actually a huge ace tanker, which I'll be sharing with you guys probably next week. But, I mean, that's luck of the draw. Could I have done this in the 5A? Probably. But we were in the 277 when we played, and we did just fine. So, you know, there's that. But, again, this whole video is based on my opinion. Now the last two tanks I think everybody's going to be able to agree on. This one is the Type 5 Heavy, and the whole line is slow and agonizing, and you could be a complete brain dead and get through them. But I bring this one up because if you've played this line and you've played the Tier 9 and you've played the Tier 10, you know the Tier 9 is pretty much the Tier 10. You have the same choice of guns on the Tier 9 as you do on the Tier 10. And you have pretty much the same armor layout. And pretty much, there's a couple more weak spots on the Tier 9, but again, you get to fight against Tier 7s with the Tier 9. And if you do fight Tier 10s, you have the same guns. Then you get to this thing, and there's more people spamming premium rounds. There's more guns that can just punch through your armor. The mediums are terrifying at this tier because of their heat pen. And, yeah, you just kind of die. You just kind of die in this tank. And again, this is completely my opinion. But I feel the Tier 9 version is almost the same thing as this. And then you upgrade, sure you have more health, but that's about it. You're going to get absolutely eviscerated playing. It's like this situation here. Obviously, I'm going to die anyway, and I'm in a bad spot, and there's, I'm just too big for this location. It is what it is. But I still just feel like, also I'm not trying to drown myself, I'm just trying to drop beneath those guys' guns. But the rocks are slippery, and I cannot stop. And I drown, and I apologize. I've seen people die here as well, and I'm wondering now if they've tried the same thing as what I just did there. But we're going to die. But suffice it to say, the Tier 9 just feels like this tank. And then you go up a tier, and you're like, wait, did my tank change at all? And the answer is no. You have the same exact tank, but now you're fighting Tier 9s and 10s. So, there you go. Last, and very much the least, in my own opinion, it's the TVP T50-51. You have a terrible line you grind through until you finally get to Tier 9. And then when you get to Tier 9 and you finally get it fully upgraded, you realize, holy cow, this is an amazing vehicle. I cannot wait for the 10. Then you grind and you get the Tier 10 and you realize, oh, I'm just playing the same exact tank. Nothing has changed. I have one extra shot in my magazine, but now I'm fighting Tier 10s. Now I'm fighting Tier 9s. Now I'm not fighting Tier 7s. You lose the troll side armor that the Skoda has. Believe it or not, that thing has trolly side armor because of the spacing. You lose that. You also, I believe, have a longer inner clip reload with this version, with this tank. The Tier 10 has a longer inner clip. It got nerfed from 1.7 seconds to 1.83, I think, which was weird. On top of that, its reload got nerfed from 24 to 27, which was fine, because I did agree that this tank was a little bit overpowered. Then they nerfed it again to 31, which was overkill. And then they released the machine, which had 27 seconds, or 27.5, so it just laughed. It was better, it was faster. Had more armor, had gun depression. It was just a better vehicle. It was just better than this. And that's just Tier 10. You also have, and Tier 9, you also have the Ragnarok at Tier 8, which is just also tier for tier, just better than this tank. Then you have the Skoda at Tier 9, which is just better than this tier for tier. Then you also have the General at Tier 8, which is arguably better than this tier for tier. There's a lot of tanks in the game which are arguably better, tier for tier, than this tank. But, I mean, you can still have good games in this tank. I'm not saying you can't. But it does feel like a disappointment. And that's the title of this video. 7 most disappointing tanks in World of Tanks. And of course, it's all my opinion. And I was very disappointed when when they nerfed this. And now I know a lot of people who were messaging me saying that they were disappointed after grinding through their tier 9, and it wasn't worth it for them. So there you go. That's my opinion. I hope you guys all enjoyed. If you did, slap that like button. Leave in the comments below what you think. If you have different opinions, different thoughts, different disappointing tanks, leave them below so other people can check them out and we can all like, ooh, look at all that stuff. But that's gonna be it. Thanks guys for tuning in. If you liked the video, make sure you go check out SpaceBANDIT. Link in the description below. And I'll be seeing you guys all later. Take care, everyone, and peace out.